Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you on the internet. If you'd like to support this channel, get additional bonus live streams at least once a month. I've been doing them weekly lately. You can go to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. I also post my works in progress before anyone else sees them. You can read most of my back catalog there online already for free. And many more little surprises and tidbits. We've got a thriving Discord community where we can share artwork and communicate and get feedback and talk and share and dive in further. So it's all at patreon.com/Jeremy. And if you'd like to see the best of the work that I share on social media, work in progress GIFs, sketches, all of the work that I post online, plus little additional blog posts, talks about creativity and process, delivered right to your inbox. If chasing me down all over the internet, you can go to newsletter.jeremy.net. I've also got a freebie when you sign up. It's a digital sketchbook that has the rough sketch pencil version of the first 3 issues of my comic book Morningstar in there. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, or if you read digitally, if you read on Amazon Kindle or on Comixology, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. What books are available over there? There's my first graphic novel that I've self-published. It is Eye of the Gods. It's a psychological thriller about a man. He is cursed with visions he can't control. My current series, Morningstar, tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven, told as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. This volume contains issues 1 through 4, along with bonus behind the scenes. You've got the actual original story, then you've got some bonus behind the scenes process in the back, sketches of characters, some early concept art. All of that is over at amazon.jeremy.net. That'll forward you to my Amazon author page. So now let us get into the actual making. So let me flip back over here so I can see the chat. And by the way, Artemation is here in the chat. Thank you for showing up. How you doing, Artemation? Hope you are having a good day so far. By the way, I don't mention this often enough, but this channel is set up for super chat. So if anyone wants to drop in a little bit of money, you are more than welcome to. It is greatly appreciated. It goes towards making these possible for me to continue these live streams and continue to put out work. So this is a page from the final issue of my comic book Morningstar. As I said, it's Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. And as it is that I'm working on this final issue, all of my live streams for the next month or so are going to be pretty spoilery. So if you've been reading the series and you really only want to read it in its completion, I'd hate to tell you to not watch my live stream, but that is not ideal for what I've been showing here. So what page is this? I think this is page 21. Look at my gallery real quick. Oh, page 22. Good, I'm making some progress. It's a 40-page issue. Normally, I would be done after my issues are 24 pages, so I'd be done for the next 2, but this one being the grand finale. And basically, there's a bunch of demons here. This whole issue is just basically the war in heaven stripped down to a big Western gunfight, except big-ass demons running through the street. And there's a bunch of angels kind of running, trying to get away. For those who aren't familiar, this character that's standing there in the distance, the one who gets blood splattered all over him, that's my version of Lucifer in the series with the dreadlocks. And I think my big challenge on this panel was trying to find a balance between putting in a background in this large panel in the middle where it felt like there's smoke and fire and devastation and people that are wounded, while still trying to keep the storytelling clear and make Lucifer stand out amongst the demons and the rebel angels that are on his side. So it was a little bit of a challenge. This panel is probably one of the more complicated ones in the series, although I've been doing a lot more complicated compositions than usual. And I just happened to open my iPad and it's like, oh yeah, I finished. The last thing I did last night was finishing up this panel. So you're going to get to see me starting a new panel. So let's see here. Let's go back to the gallery. Did I start setting up the next panel? You know, I thought about doing a live stream specifically on how to set up comic book panels for gray toning and possibly coloring as well. This works for coloring as well, even though I'm doing black and white. I thought about doing a live stream specifically on that topic. And I was going to do one actually where I record it without any viewers, so I wouldn't necessarily have to check the chat and answer when I could just focus on describing that. I think that I'm just going to do it here, and if I need to re-record it later on, working on a different page, I will. But this is as good an opportunity as any. So I'm working in a Procreate, the digital drawing app, and one of the downsides of Procreate is that it doesn't have flats per se, like comic paper, like you can in Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint. But I've found a working process that I find satisfactory, and I enjoy drawing in Procreate a lot more than I do drawing in Photoshop. I've tried Clip Studio Paint. I haven't tried it on the tablet, but Procreate just feels very, very intuitive to me. Other than not being able to have flats and the magic wand tool not working as well as say it does in Photoshop or other apps, I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm just gonna walk you through. Let's see, Fry's in the chat. Hey, what's up, man? How you doing? Thanks for swinging by. Let's see here. I think that that's Fry from Crypto Comics. It may not be Fry from Crypto Comics, but if it is, what up, man? If it's a different Fry, then welcome and nice to have you. But that's my boy there. And if you guys haven't heard about Crypto Comics, you're hearing a lot about NFT art. Crypto Comics is leading the edge in terms of selling comic books that are backed by cryptocurrency and Ethereum. So you should definitely check them out. I've done a live stream with them on before, so you can check that out if you go into my archives and search for Crypto Comics. So my process here for this is I'm a little bit anal about it. I like to name my layers so it makes it less likely for me to accidentally make changes or mistakes or draw on layers I don't want to. So when I start out, the first thing I do is I darken up the layer a little bit, and I use a trick that was taught to me by my buddy Karl Altstetter. Instead of using layers, instead of using levels, what I do is I duplicate the layer. I take the layer that's on top, I set it to multiply, I drop it to about 50% opacity. And this gives me something where it bumps up the blacks just a little bit. And I don't know who taught Karl this technique or whether he invented it himself, but I've found that in lieu of working out with layers, I turn it kind of off and on again, and it gives me a slightly richer black without having to think very much. Whereas with layers, sometimes you're tweaking it and you'll up the lightness and you'll get a little bit of washout in some area and you'll see some line art drop in another area. This kind of alleviates that. So I will collapse these two layers together. So merging them is just a matter of pinching the layers together. So they are now, that's my line art layer. I will rename it line art. Or actually, I usually just rename it artwork. That does the trick. I will change this to multiply now so that it is transparent, like an overlay. For those who aren't necessarily familiar, I know for people that are really used to Photoshop and Clip Studio, you're pretty familiar with those terms. But for anyone who isn't, multiply, there's a bunch of layer settings here that you can change your artwork so that how it will react to things that are laid below it, where, depending on the settings. Putting it on multiply basically makes it so that it's anything that's white is transparent, anything that's black is opaque, or the darker it is, the more opaque it is. So if something's sort of grayish in there, the color will still show through. But if it's black, it'll be extra black. It'll be solidly black. Anything underneath it will just reinforce that. And then I will lock this layer so that I won't accidentally start drawing on it. Then I count how many panels I have. And I count this as a panel with 4 pages because the area at the bottom that has Whoops, I don't want to unlock that. I want that locked. The area on the bottom, these two bullets that are passing each other, there is technically a square around that that's framing that as a long, skinny panel at the bottom of the page. So so I count the whole thing as 4 panels that I'm going to do. And I'll tell you why the panel count is important. See, Fry says he's good. It's Sunday night for him. He says it's a different Fry. He says he's resting after a stressful week of work. His taxes are stacking up. Hope you don't mind if I swing by today. I'm very happy to have you swing by today. And, you know, happy to have a different Fry in my life. You know, from what I've seen, people named Fry are good people. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're relaxing. And, you know, I hope the day continues to be great. Let's see here. All right, so I've got 4 panels. 1, 2, 3, 4. Move my artwork up to the top layer. And what I do now is I will go through it. I'm going to fill each of these quote unquote panels with a solid color, kind of like you would do with flats. I usually will try to use a 20% gray that I have preset. And I'll just, oh, that's the other thing. I will go through, and usually I will number them right at the start. So this will be panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4. And an important part that I should call out about this process as I'm going through now is the fact that because I'm working just in grayscale, I don't need to have every single piece of this this frame masked out or flats for every piece of the frame. It's simple enough that I can just have a frame blocked off and I can color inside of that frame like it's just a simple sketch. I think you would need something more detailed if you were working in color, but I will address that as I get this set up. Let's see. UL's in the chat. Thanks for stopping by. He also says, Fry, if you have a business, you can write off a lot. True. Tax time is coming for all of us. I'm not looking forward to prepping mine. It's eating into my my drawing time. I gotta get stuff all ready for my meeting with my CPA. Let's see here. Fry also says, nah, I'm a student. I study at a private university, so we have extra taxes for exams. Sucks. What can you do? Yeah, nobody gets away from the tax, man. So what I'm going to do here is I'm starting with, let me make sure I'm starting with panel 1. I am. I will go in here with the selection tool, and I will use a rectangular selection. And I can select this as I've done, and I'm not sure how well the selection shows up on screen. Instead of the marching ants that you get around it, you can just see it's giving me these horizontal bars, and it's clear in the area that I have selected. Now, when I normally select this, I can go and just go to the, there's a couple ways I can do this. I can grab the dot, that is the color that I have selected, and drag it over, and it'll fill this area. I'm gonna undo that. I didn't want to undo the selection, but you know what? I don't mind. I'll do it a couple of times just so you can see. The other thing you can do is you can grab this. You can go to your layers palette and go to fill layer, and it'll fill with the color. What I like to do, because it's the most direct, okay, it maintained the selection this time. That's good. So, well, crap, but I got to bring the selection palette up. Oh, I can just hold my finger on it and it keeps it. I just learned something. Normally, whenever I've had to, that little selection menu at the bottom goes away, I've had to tap it again and it undoes the selection and brings the menu up. But if I just hold my finger on it, it maintains the selection while bringing that palette back. I did not discover that to this very moment, but it's a useful thing to know. I'm glad I just found that out. So hopefully if you guys use Procreate, you can use that too. So the way that I tend to do it is at this menu at the bottom, they've got, add selection, remove selection, invert selection, copy, paste, feather, save and load, which we will come back to because I'm going to show you how that's useful later on here, and color fill. Now, color fill is the one that I use. If you have color fill checked, then when you make a selection, it will just fill with whatever color is your color you have selected. And it has done that. Although I'm looking over here at the edge and I can see I'm a little bit OCD about it. There's a little bit of white that it didn't get. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again. In fact, I find it easier to over select and trim away than it is for me to under select and try to get it just right. UL says, can you have materials like dots or cross-hatching in that program? You can, in the sense that, let me see here. Here we go. Screen tone. There's a brush in here called screen tone, and I think it's under textures. Let's see, decimals. Let's see. There's a wide variety. It has a lot of brushes and brush categories in here. And I can't remember where the screen tone brush is, or whether it's one that I downloaded. It might also be a brush that I created. But you can create brush patterns much like you can in Photoshop. And like I've got the screen tone brush selected, I can go in here and I can just brush in like the zip-a-tone. So if I were to just go in here and say, all right, I'm just gonna zip-a-tone this guy, I can go and do that, and I can change the brush. I think the brush size doesn't change the size of the dot pattern. You would have to go in and manually tweak the dot pattern to make different sizes. But what you could also do is create like, I don't know, 5 different screen tones at different size dot patterns and just bring those, just switch to whatever brush you need. And you can also, just by changing the color, you can change the color of the dot patterns. So you can have full-on black dot patterns. It's like it wasn't gray because it was the size of the brush. It was gray because the color that I had selected was gray. The dot pattern size is the same. Now you can also change the opacity with this brush so that then you can have different opacities. You can build up the darkness of your zip-a-tone. But yeah, you can create dot patterns with this. There's probably brush packs you can find online for free that have different zip-a-tone and pattern effects. But I find it easier to just use. I have that zip tone in there in case I ever want to use it or play with it. For the most part, I really do prefer using the most simplest brushes, because sometimes when you have fancy techniques, you can fool yourself into thinking you're making something cool when really it's just covering up bad art. And I'm still, I don't want to say self-conscious is the word, because I kind of just put it out there and do the best I can with every page. But I'm very aware that I, in the past, have used style to try and cover up bad draftsmanship or bad visual storytelling. And what I would rather do is make something the best I can and have the places where it's weak be very visible. So I'm just aware of it and I have to just keep working on getting better, as opposed to maybe I don't notice that something wasn't well executed because it's got a really cool zip-a-tone pattern on it or a cool splatter on it. I try to keep the effects to a bare minimum. Let's see here. So UL says to use these in terms of dots or cross-hatching in the program, to use for shading he means. Yeah. So yeah, you can use, and you can, it's what I just showed you there with the zip-a-tone. I don't know if I have a cross-hatching brush, but I'm sure there's a cross-hatching pattern you can find, or you can even create one. In fact, there's definitely tutorials online on how to create brushes in Procreate. It's not too different from how it is in any other drawing program. I'm sure Clip Studio Paint has a slightly different brush engine from Photoshop's, which is different from Procreate. But, the only reason why I'm not maybe I'll do a tutorial on brush creation at some point in the future, but I don't really feel like it's necessarily something I want to do because I don't really create a lot of custom brushes. I'm much more about creating good art with the default tools and making it more about my draftsmanship and my understanding than it is about having a cool brush. I don't think custom brushes are really that important, except for speed and productivity. Solid Snake says, Jeremy using digital art. He says, are you new to using digital? Well, I won't say that I'm new to using digital, but mostly when I tend to use it, it's for color and gray tone and that sort of thing, as opposed to drawing directly in digital. But working in Procreate, I've been drawing quite a bit in digital, and I really enjoy it. In fact, Procreate, I've never enjoyed drawing in Photoshop, but a large part of that is less about Photoshop and it's more about the I mean, I hate to say it because Wacom really does create great products, but I absolutely hate the Wacom stylus. And I know that they have released a stylus that is thinner and more like the Apple Pencil, but the default stylus that comes with the Cintiqs or the Wacoms in general, I've never liked those. Like, in fact, I stuck with the what's it called? The Graphire. Before the Intuos, or actually after the first Intuos, but before Intuos became their main brand, they had a tablet called the Graphire, which was like the entry-level small tablet that you drew on while you looked at the screen. There was no monitor in it. I love that thing, and I kept it for years because the pencil was small and more pencil-like, and I don't really like the chunky one. And my Cintiq for work is comes with the default one, and I don't want to go out and buy my own stylus just for work, so I've been making do with the chunky one. But when drawing on the iPad with the Apple Pencil, it just feels like what I mean. That's for all of the flaws that Apple may have. I think they're generally the user experience on their devices is their strong point, and they really have created a process for drawing that feels very intuitive, very relaxed, and I really prefer. I feel like in that sense the iPad is living up to the experience in terms of it's a device and a process for drawing on that really feels seamless and fits well with the workflow people that are used to traditional media. So I'm not new to drawing digital, but this is the first time. Like, I already do all of my Graytones digitally, but the next comic I make, I'm going to draw completely digital, and that will be a new experience for me. But I'm looking forward to it, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop working traditionally. It means I just want to try out this process, working digital, and see how it goes. Let's see here. UL says it's more of an additive using custom tools. You always start with a good foundation if you want lasting creation. Yes. Got to have those strong fundamentals. I mean, there's artists who there's an artist named Devonelle Kurtz who she's a background artist on Disenchanted, but her work, I just saw a video she put up the other day where she was showing her process. She's got custom brushes, like she did a cityscape, and she's got custom brushes for the windows, for the bricks on the building, for the landscape, and it just looks spectacular. And that's a place where I could see how much time having custom brushes set up saves her. So it's not like I'm saying custom brushes are always crap, never use them. I think that any tool is only as good as its user. She knows how to use custom brushes very well. My fear is that I would use them as a crutch, and I would make weaker art as opposed to them making me stronger. So it's like being on a diet. I'm not going to let myself eat foods that I know are not good for me. And I feel like right now I haven't put in the reps that I have the control over it that I should have. All right. So the last thing I did, I think earlier I showed you dragging from the eyedropper and filling a layer. That's what I did with the final panel, because the final panel is the area at the bottom where I've got two bullets passing each other, but it bleeds out into the whole background. So I just have that down there, and that's why I can kind of mask that area off. Now I'm going to show you the reason why I filled these in the way that I did. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select each panel. So I should have panel 1 selected. Let me make sure oh, that's why it's trying to color fill. All right. Then I scrub with 3 fingers. You can also just click clear, but what it's doing now is it's punching a hole. Like if I were to turn off that, I'm punching a hole in that in panel 4 where each of these layers are. And the reason for that I will explain in a moment. So I'm punching out each of the panels. And those of you who are familiar with digital can probably guess what I'm going to do next. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go up to each panel and I'm going to change it from a regular layer to an alpha lock layer. And what alpha lock does is it keeps it so that you can only draw on panels that that already have artwork in them. All of the opaque panels, so like an alpha channel, all of the opaque panels, I mean, all the transparent panels, like an alpha channel, are locked, meaning I cannot draw on something that is transparent. What that translates to is, let me switch to a different color here. So right now I have this panel 4 selected, and if I were to go in here and draw, I can draw anywhere on the outside, anywhere that is what I've filled with panel 4. But if I were to draw across, like I'm sweeping all the way across the screen now, I can't draw inside of those panels because the area where those panels are is transparent. If I turn off the line art. Yeah, so panel 4 looks like everything except for panels 1 through 3. If I were to turn these off, that's panel 3, that's panel 2, that's panel 1. Each one of these layers is alpha locked. So I can only draw on those layers. Now, that makes it very simple for me. By the way, Solid Snake. Oh, let's see. First, Fry says, I'm starting to love anatomy. I'm going to invest in some Loomis, though, because my head structure and portraits suck very much. You know, Loomis is great for head structure. I really enjoy him. Another great book. I don't know how great it is for structure, but I think it's great for getting the characters and the subtleties of portraiture, is a book by Nathan Fowkes, and it's just called Portraits in Charcoal. I think it's called just Portraits in Charcoal, but if you look up, if you just search for Nathan, F-O-W, I think it's F-O-W-K-E-S, Nathan Fowkes. If you do a search for him, you'll probably see some interviews with him on Bobby Chu's channel, the Schoolism, because he's done some Schoolism courses with him. That's how I discovered Nathan Fowkes. He has an excellent book on drawing in charcoal. Oh wait, no, duh, I'm forgetting. My sensei, my master, Karl Gnass, he has a great book called Headshots, which is about, that's a very good structural book. He has really great tutorial in there in terms of building the head. He kind of walks you step by step on how to do the head. That actually should have been my first go-to. I think I've just been studying with Karl so long that I forget that he actually has, you know, that his books, yes, books specifically on educational content, because he has 2 great sketchbooks he's published. But his book Headshots is all about drawing the head. I have to recommend that. Oh, Fry says, I got it. Good. I'm glad to hear. That's the excellent book. So I would recommend, along with the Loomis book, I would definitely recommend Karl's book and the Nathan Fowkes books. Like those 3, I think are solid, give you a really solid base in terms of drawing the head. Pardon the slurping. I'm finishing some coffee. Yes, I drink it through a metal straw because hopefully it will keep it from staining my teeth. That's the plan. So let's see here. You all asks, what's your ratio of learning from others versus training yourself? Wow. Well, I would say that it's probably 60. I would say it's 60-40 learning from others. 60% learning from others, 40% learning from myself. And that's because I went to a fine art undergraduate program. They weren't necessarily geared towards draftsmanship. That wasn't the point there. So I don't think that really taught me a lot about creativity and coming up with ideas and concepts. But it didn't really help improve my draftsmanship. And it wasn't until I started taking animation classes that I really found some great instructors. And since then, I would say that, you know, I've spent over a decade taking classes at the Animation Guild, mostly with Karl, but I've taken with a few other instructors there, John Messer, Will Weston, and I've taken some classes with other instructors over the years. But the point is that those classes, you have to still, even with a great instructor, you have to do work on your own. You have to sit down with art books and study. And again, a lot of the books I have, I've studied over the years. On the Patreon, I'm doing what I call the art book study group, where I'm sitting down with the works of George Bridgman, and I'm drawing page by page. I'm just copying the book. I'm not copying it trying to duplicate every drawing in there. I'm copying it trying to improve my understanding. Like, I'm looking for not what is Bridgman's drawing, but what is he trying to say with that drawing? What is he trying to communicate with someone? And so when I'm drawing, I'm trying to copy the idea that's in the drawing. So if it doesn't look like Bridgman's drawing, but it describes what he was trying to teach you with each sketch, that's what I consider a success. So they're not master studies in the sense that I'm trying to duplicate his drawing as close as possible. I'm just trying to learn from him. And I think that that's how I approach all art books. And I have a lot of art books. And I would say that the 40% of self-taught is, I would say probably 20% of the self-taught is me learning by making comics and making art. So I think you do actually learn by making stuff and making stuff unsuccessfully and saying, oops, that didn't work. Let me try something else. And then I'd say another 20% of the self-taught is just learning from art books. But I've learned a ton from in-person art classes. I've learned a ton from watching other people's live streams and learning classes from, learning from other people. When I have the time to take more classes, I look forward to learning from Schoolism. I watch Bobby Chu's live stream. He's got some great stuff on there. And there's a lot of classes he has where I feel like they could help shore up my fundamentals. Because I am always, even though I've been drawing for many, many years, I always feel like the fundamentals need work. And I'm always going back to them, trying to refine them. Proco is another one. I've watched a ton of Proco's videos. I love his channel. In fact, my father also draws as more of a hobbyist. And I mean, he drew earlier in life, but he's retired. He's getting back into it. And I bought him Proco's portrait drawing class because I thought this would be a great thing for him. He'd really enjoy it. And he did enjoy it. So yeah, it's a lot of learning you learn from everywhere. I just look at it as like, if there's a chance to take opportunity, whether take information and knowledge, if it's from another human being, if it's from a book, if it's from a digital course, just absorb what you can and try to, I mean, the main thing is trying to make sure that it moves you towards whatever your goals are. So you do have to be selective because there's so much information out there and all of it's good. So, but just because it's good information, it doesn't mean you should go after it only because you're like, look, let me focus on, for instance, if I was going to be a 3D artist, I'd be spending a lot more time, learning ZBrush and Maya and Blender. That isn't necessarily my personal goal. If I was a 2D artist, maybe I'd be 2D animator. Maybe I'd be spending a lot of time learning how to use Toon Boom or other programs, their animation programs. But yeah, I figured the ratio is going to be different for everybody. Some people only learn from in-person classes. Some people only learn from books. Some people only learn by just trial and error and making stuff. You kind of have to just go through life as an omnivore and find what works for you, because there's things I think everyone should learn, the drawing fundamentals, but everybody learns differently. Everybody's brain works differently. Some people really have a hard time with just sitting in a classroom and listening to someone talk. Some people can only learn by watching someone demo. Some people can only learn from books. And it's just a matter of finding what works well for you. Now, I'm going to come back here to, let's see, UL says, yeah, trying to find the language in strokes or that feeling. So now I've got this panel alpha locked. And that means, like I showed you before, let me make sure I've got white selected. I can come in here and let me put my brush all the way up. I can just come in and draw. Or actually, let me reverse engineer that. Let's say that I fill this with white now, and I come in and while I'm at it, I think I can just turn that background off. on panel 4 so I can keep this focused. It'll help me keep my values and sense of what's going on the whole page. But let's say that I come in here and I start. Now I can come in here, and usually what I'll do is having this selected, so it's on alpha lock, meaning if I draw outside of the panel, it'll stop. If I draw outside of any of the borders, it'll block it. So I can just go in here, and I will just sit down and just color this without any flats. That's usually how I work per panel. But I mentioned before that in the selections, there's a save and load. The reason why I do the alpha locks is because you can, in a way, do flats. You can do them through what I mentioned before, the save and load. So let's say that I go in here and I switch to the freehand selection tool and I have the color fill deselected. I can come in here and I can, might want to zoom in a little bit more since I've got all these fingers. And I think that Clip Studio Paint, again, I haven't really used it much, but I think that it has tools in it to kind of help flat for you and make that quicker. Procreate does not have anything as such that would be useful in that way. And that's unfortunate. But I have found that using a tool that feels really comfortable to me is a reasonable trade-off that I'm willing to make. And you don't have to drag around every line. You can also do sort of an polygonal selection by just putting the pencil down where you want the next line to be. Like you're using the polygon lasso in Photoshop, and you can just basically click your way around a figure. And I will address the chat in a minute, but I kind of need to focus on this as I go. Now, my point in making these selections is if you're doing a particularly complex compo page, or actually if you're working in color, that's really where I think you're going to need this, because I think working in black and white, when you are just doing value, I don't think you really need anything more than blocking off a particular panel so that all of the values stay within that panel border. But when you've got something where you've got different skin tones or different layer effects, or if you want to, just really keep the sky separate so you can tweak the colors of the sky versus character skin tones versus their clothing and weapons, all the different props, you want to be able to make those selections quickly. You want to be able to reselect and deselect quickly. So I've almost got this guy getting stabbed all selected. Almost got him. All right. And I think if I were being really anal about this, I would probably cut around that sword sticking out of his back. All right, now, so I've got this this demon figure selected, and if I go down to save and load, there's a little plus sign for your selections that you have saved. So I hit the plus sign, and it's got selection 1. And I can't zoom in to the interface, but there's a tiny little silhouette of a guy who's got his arms up like, I can stab. That's the selection that I just made. And now that I've got this selection here, I can deselect. And then if I come back later and I decide, oh, I want to fill that with a dark gray, I can go in here, go to save and load, and I can click on this selection. It puts the selection back, and then I can come in here, pick that darker gray, and I can drag and drop, and now it'll fill that with that dark gray. Let's say that I were working in color, and I decide, oh, wait, I don't want that gray. I want him purple. Come in there, drop in purple. I can do whatever. I can do the hue, saturation, layer effects on that selection, the color balance, all the stuff that Gaussian blur, all the stuff that you would normally do with flats, you can do with this thing. Now, I know that under those circumstances, you'd be like, well, why don't I just do that for the whole panel and just make my flats with those little selections the way you would in Photoshop making flats? And I will tell you the reason why I don't is because if I come back to this interface, if I go to the selection here and I hold on it, it'll select it. If I try to move, all I can do is delete it or select it. There's no other options. I cannot rename the selections. I don't know what the maximum number of selections I can make per file is, but if you were doing flats, traditional comic book flats, you would have maybe like 30 of these for like the whole page. And if you can't rename them, considering how small some of those selections might be, it would be impossible to keep track of what's what. You'd have to be hunting and pecking. If there's one flaw that I have with this selection setup, it is simply that you can't rename these selections, because renaming them, I wouldn't worry about it. I would just say panel 1 demon, or panel 1 foreground, panel 3 sky, panel whatever. I would just really quick rename them as I go. I can just go through, click, 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 and select them as I need. So that's the reason why I use this in combination with the in combination with the alpha lock, because this way, generally, like for instance, with this panel, as complicated as it is, I could just do the panel itself is alpha locked, and then I might do a selection for the 2 demons in the foreground, a selection for the angel here, Michael, running with his gun, and then a selection for the 2 background demons. So it would just really be 3 selections plus the actual environment, maybe a 4th one for the sky. And that would be enough that it's not going to be so many that's going to overwhelm me, and I'm not going to be able to keep track of what's going on the page. In terms of that menu of selections. So, but I feel like that combination of just having a couple of selections per panel, then maybe I can keep it down to 10, and it's not so many on a page that I couldn't figure out what exactly I'm coloring and why. So that is pretty much my process for setting up a file for doing Graytones in Procreate. Yeah, that's pretty much what I do there. Pretty straightforward. And from here, I just go in and I treat it more like a coloring book. And I tend to color back to front, meaning I try to color what's going on in the environment behind the figure. And basically, right now, all I try to do is with each panel, I start with separating the sky from the trying to separate the sky from the whatever's on the ground, whether it be city, trees, buildings, whatever's in the background. So try to separate the sky from that. And it's simple enough that I can just put in, let me make this brush a little bit smaller. All I'm doing is really just sketching in silhouettes of buildings. Not getting super complex, super detailed. Just putting in little silhouettes and giving you that sense that there's stuff back there. I'm also dealing with a city that's on fire, so I'll come back in and add smoke in some places. And I've gone back and forth between making the smoke darker versus also making the smoke in some places very, making it the same color as the silhouettes of the building to try and make it fit in with the background more. I felt like when I made the smoke darker, it might look more realistic value-wise, but it was drawing too much attention to itself that there was smoke there. And I really wanted the smoke to kind of drop into the background. So now I've been doing it in other panels. And that's the nice thing about this, is I can just experiment as I go and try different things. I just try to find places where the smoke looks interesting and will fit in. And I just sort of scribble it in and then refine it as I go. So I was on a bit of a jag there. Let me come back to the chat and see what you guys got going on here. Byron says, and Byron, welcome. Thanks for dropping by, man. Good to see you. Says, I can definitely understand that. I'm someone that learns best when I see someone do it and attempt it for myself. Having it explained to me rarely does enough for me. That was back to the earlier conversation about everyone having different ways of learning. Fry says, digital is nice, but traditional is such a nice time, or just doing watercolor or charcoal sketches, especially after doing digital for a long time. It's a nice breather. Yes. For the longest time, my big thing about not using digital was I've never been anti-digital. I believe that everyone has to find what works best for them. But in my day job, I spend a lot of time in front of a computer, like most people. And I found that after spending all day in front of a computer, the last thing I wanted to do was come home and spend my personal time in front of a computer. And that, again, comes back to the user experience of working on an iPad or a digital tablet, because I've seen people working on the Surface Pro and they really seem to love it. It looks very intuitive. So it's not an Apple versus PC thing. This just happens to be the device that I'm on. But working on a tablet just seems very relaxing, and it does not feel like being in front of a computer in the way that that working in Photoshop on a desktop machine does. Let me redo that stroke. So yeah, that's why I'm now in this process really embracing working digital, is that it just doesn't feel like work anymore. It feels pleasant now. I'm enjoying it. You also says, I like mixing them, starting mostly from paper and then scanning to digital and other add-ons. Byron says, I'm going to have to switch to digital soon due to workflow related reasons, but I prefer traditional if I'm honest. And Solid Snake says, Solid Spider Snake says, sometimes I do storyboards on paper. For the longest time, I think if you guys have seen the videos I've done in the past on my thumbnail process, I would do my thumbnails with a brush and ink, which is very unconventional, but I did it because I wanted to keep my inking sharp. I wanted to be able to, even when I wasn't inking a comic book issue, to be able to keep myself in practice in terms of inking. So I very much, agree in terms of like enjoying just the process and the feel of traditional materials. That said, I think I may actually do thumbnails. I think that any tool that you use a lot of, you just develop facility with controlling and manipulating. And I think that was very much true for me with inking with a brush. And that was why I found that doing my thumbnails, I still don't consider myself a master of inking with a brush, but I am far more comfortable with it than I was when I started Morningstar. Because this, believe it or not, this series, I mean, I've been working on this series for about a decade, but it is the first comic book that I I inked with a brush. I've tried, and I was even talking to my buddy Karl Altstetter. I was talking to him last night, and I had mentioned to him, which he was actually surprised that because we talk about process a lot, so he was surprised when I told him something he didn't know, which was that this series is the first time I've actually what I would say successfully inked with a brush. Since I was 15 years old, I would try every 5 years to ink with a brush, and I would get frustrated and fed up and give up on it. And finally, after years of doing that, things finally clicked with me. And part of it was that I just did not have enough good draftsmanship to control the brush. And then part of it was that I was trying to do things that an experienced inker might be able to do. Well, it was about the size of the brush. Like a lot of people recommend the Winsor Newton or the Raphael brushes for inking. And they would have like a number 4 size brush, and they would just be able to get these amazing thick and thin lines. And I could not do it, but that's because I didn't have the brush control. And finally I realized, oh, if I just use smaller brushes and treat them like microns or repeatographs, where I just use whatever size brush I need for whatever type drawing I do, it worked way better. And now I think I have developed enough control that I can get a wider range of marks from one larger brush. But I had to develop that control. So it's almost like I needed the different size brushes as a safety net to work up to it. And that still doesn't mean that you have to do everything all with one brush. It's just nicer when you don't have to change tools and you can just work with one thing, which again, that's one of the joys of digital. But for learning any type of fundamentals, just draftsmanship and control, I feel like learning is better done traditionally, and then making new stuff. I feel like that's a place where digital, it's a good place for it to come in. But with that said, this whole series is traditionally inked. I would draw it, I would draw my layouts traditionally. It used to be that the only digital was the Graytones. This is the first issue where I used to do my layouts traditionally as well. This issue, I did my layouts digital, and it went pretty well. There was a lot of back and forth in terms of refining that process and really learning what I wanted out of my layouts, working digital versus traditional. But I really did enjoy the process, and it made it easier to revise and change stuff on the fly, which is what digital is so great at. I think people are always looking for this whole traditional versus digital battle, and I hope that soon we will get past that, because it really is not an either or. A tool is only as good as its master. And the reason why a lot of teachers tell you start with traditional is because as hard as traditional may be, traditional is easier to master than digital, because all digital gives you really are effects. It doesn't teach you how to draw better. And I think I mentioned that before, so I don't want to belabor that point. Digital is extremely powerful, but it's just a tool. It's like using an airbrush. I don't know if any of you have ever picked up a traditional airbrush. It seems like a very difficult tool to master, but once you get using it, they're pretty straightforward. But that said, I think it's another tool where once you know how to use it, you can do the stuff that looks like magic, and it's not really magic. It's just knowing how to use that tool. So, the whole question of can I use digital? Should I use digital? I need to stick with traditional. It sounds like all you guys are saying, I prefer traditional, but I will use digital when needed. That's where I am on the whole thing too. But I'm seeing the speed that digital is giving me in my workflow, and I'm opening myself up more and more to bringing more and more digital into my workflow. Like I had mentioned, that I'm going to try doing an entire comic book digital when I do my next series. We'll see how that goes. So let's see here. A couple more folks in the chat. Paul is in the chat. Hey, how you doing, Paul? Thanks for stopping by. And he says, how have you figured out partitioning time for comics? I have a typical 9 to 5, so I feel so burnt out after. I only have enough willpower to work on my comic on Sundays. I'm 100% digital after spending literally 20 years traditional. 3D models, Control Z, just makes the process so much more fun. I miss traditional sometimes though. Well, first off, congratulations on staying at it for so many years. I've been working for about 20 years myself. And yes, I'm in the same boat as you, trying to create comics around a day job. It comes down to, first off, I am not nearly as productive as I would like to be. And it comes down to just having the number of hours in the day. So my schedule is basically, I am able to do my job. My job, even though it's creative, it's a lot more graphic design stuff. And, you know, I'm a lot more clicking it with a mouse. I'm not drawing that much. So I can do my design work while I'm eating. And what I do is I will eat my lunch while I'm doing my day job. And I take my lunch break every day, 5 days a week. I use my lunch break to work on comics. And that gives me, you know, at least 5 hours a week. And then I have, in the evening, I try to get in 1 hour of work in the evening after work. So I get 2 hours of personal creative time in a day. Now, mind you, my wife and I don't have kids, but I'm still married. I want to spend time with my wife. I like her. I like hanging out with her. I like being able to watch movies with her. And sometimes I will bring the iPad into the living room, and, you know, we're having couples time where we're watching a TV show, but it may be something that I'm not super invested in, and it's something that maybe she wants to watch more than I do, so I can just sort of listen to it while I'm drawing. If we're watching something that we both like, I tend to like, I think like a lot of artists, we like shows that are visually engaging, have some really dynamic storytelling. Something like, you know, the Game of Thrones stuff, The Wire, the kind of things where you're really immersed and you want to watch every moment, every expression on the actor's face, all the subtleties and nuances. So it's another reason why I try to keep TV watching to a minimum. But really, my work schedule is, you know, 5 hours during the week. If I'm lucky, I can get 10 hours in. Sometimes I have to use my personal work to do stuff like writing my newsletter or doing, you know, some site design work or prepping files for some T-shirts or prints. Or sometimes I'm just doing it lettering. But I try to keep it to, I try to make sure I get in at least 5, if not 10 hours of creative time per week. And then on the weekends, sometimes we're doing, you know, couple stuff and I don't get much drawing done. But this live stream, for instance, this is a level of accountability. I show up with you guys. I've been doing it bi-weekly for the past few weeks, but I think I'm going back. I am going back to doing the Sunday live streams weekly. So every week I'm going to show up and be here with you guys for at least an hour. And then, you know, last night I was able to hang out with my buddy. I mentioned Karl Altstetter. I was able to hang out with him. And we just hung out, both working on personal projects, and talked for a couple of hours. And it was pretty similar to what we're doing here on this live stream, where we were just talking shop and hanging out and both working on our projects while we talked. So I think when comics are not your full-time gig, you have to be both diligent and patient. It's taken me 10 years to finish an 8-issue series. And at one point I was able to do 2.5 issues a year, but I've also, this is something that I was talking a lot, like intently with my buddy Karl about, is that over the past couple of issues, I've gotten slower each issue. And I've gotten slower because you know, as you get better, you see more flaws in your work. And once you see flaws, it's one thing when you're just drawing and you're like, oh, I don't know how to make this better. I don't know how to get better. But as you improve, then what I think improving is really being able to perceive flaws that you didn't perceive before. That's what I think improvement really is. Once you do that, then it's a matter of figuring out how to fix those things. And I think I've gone through a phase where that learning how to fix problems process took up a lot of time. I think now I'm slowly starting to get to the point of getting a little bit faster in that I can look at the mistakes and say, all right, I know that for this thing, I need to shoot more reference. For this, I need to change the lighting. For this, it was a bad storytelling moment. I need to come back and rework this panel. I can assess those things quicker, but it's just a matter of looking at it, fixing it, and then say, and also look at it and saying, all right, is this something that is worth me fixing? Because sometimes there's stuff I draw and I know that it's not great, but it's on a small panel, and I say, all right, can I live with this? Can I put that energy towards, because there are also panels that in this issue that I have completely redrawn, like gone back to the layout stage, even after I've already laid out and printed out the boards to ink them. I'm like, oh, this page just isn't good. I need to redo it. And I'm trying to save my energy or my time for those pages where it really warrants me going back and fixing it. And if there's a panel where it's a small panel that's bad, being able to accept, all right, well, I sucked on that panel. Do better next time. Move on to the next one. And that's also a learning process, is learning what I can and can't live with. So it's taking small bites at the apple every day. I think I went on a long, rambly answer, Paul, but for me, it's sticking with having a committed time to work on my work. And if that committed time is only 1 day a week, or if it's every other day a week, or 3 days a week, whatever it is, setting aside time, committing to that, and then making just making as much progress as you can and being patient with yourself. Because if you're doing everything that you can do already, time-wise, you can't ask more of that. I sacrifice about 3 hours a week to study that art study group art book study group that I've been doing. And I feel okay sacrificing that time because usually I take figure drawing classes. And I skipped them this semester because I really feel like I want to dig into some of the art books that I have that I haven't been I haven't been studying. So I figure, all right, normally I would be spending this time in a class anyway, so I'm just making my own self-taught class, which kind of also ties into discussions we had earlier about how much of my education has been self-taught versus being in classes. Let's see here. You all says, yeah, Control Z is magic. Fry says, got it late, man. Thank you for all the books you recommended. Good luck on your stream and on the comic. Looking forward to the next stream. Take care, everyone. Good night, Fry. Thank you so much. Thanks for hanging out. You all says, enjoy the ride, Fry. Paul says, totally get what you're saying. I love being immersed and watching animations. I work in IT and work on my iPad to do character designs during my lunch break. I think I may aim for an hour a day like you. Yeah, I get that. I get frustrated sometimes because when I get just in 1 hour of making art and then I finish that hour, sometimes I'm just getting into my groove at the end of that hour. And I get frustrated because I'm like, oh God, I'm just warming up. I want to do this for like 3 or 4 more hours. But I've made peace with the fact that I can only do what I can do. And I keep persisting in the hope that I will be able to spend more and more time doing personal work. But balance is hard to come by. It's very difficult, I think, for any creative to find those opportunities or to be in a position where you can spend your time doing all the things that are fulfilling to you. So I try to make peace with it and do what I'm able to do with the time that I have. And that's my greater philosophy about life as a whole. I mean, I want to travel more, pandemic aside, I want to be able to travel more. My wife and I want to see more, do more things. I want to spend more time reading books. I used to read like a book every other week. And now I'm lucky if I can read a couple of books a year. And I have a huge library of unread books because I kept saying, oh, well, I'm going to read this when I have time. And I just haven't made time. So I need to slow down and make more time for for doing more reading, you know, spending more time hanging out with friends and family. Like, my friends are at the point where they just have accepted the fact that they only get to see me a handful of times a year because I'm just off making art all the time. And I'm lucky that I even have any friends at all, because there's so many years where I've just been like, oh, I would love to hang out, but I am working on some art tonight. To the point where I actually used to bring my sketchbook to the bar with me. And my friends at a certain point had to start saying, look, you got to leave the sketchbook at home. You are hanging out with us and we want your attention because we miss you. And I am lucky to have people in my life that miss me enough that they want me to stop drawing and hang out with them. I don't take it as as them not being supportive of my art. I think we're all lucky if we have people in our lives that genuinely do care about us and want to be with us. So I try to. The younger Jeremy was super self-absorbed. I can't think of a better word for it. But I was laser focused, but to the detriment of, I think, probably my social health. And I think as I've gotten older and my friends have started families and I've gotten married, I've learned to say, all right, it's a good thing to. The lifestyle of an artist really lends itself to being all-consuming. And I have learned that even though I want that, I want to let art consume me like a flame. That it's healthier as a human being to let go of that and make time for the non-art things in life. And I feel weird even saying that, because I think definitely before I got married, that would just be like, shine them. I'm going to do my own thing. And if people can't deal with it, screw them. But I'd like to think it's a level of maturity that I realize that these other things I have in my life, I value. My relationships, I value. My marriage, I value. And learning that these other things that you value, you have to give them attention to, or you won't have them. The same way that if you don't work on your art, you know, it's not going to get better. If you don't work on your life and the people around you, then those things will deteriorate as well. So I'd like to think that that's a positive note to wrap things up on. Yeah. Let's see here. Paul says, oh God, you're preaching, man. This stack of unread novels and comics and art books mocking me in my corner. Byron says, yeah, you got to balance that thing, balance that sort of thing. Paul says, you called me out. I could definitely be more attentive to friends and family. I got to do better because I know I can do better in that area. I mean, I cannot fault you for that, because like I said, even 5 years ago, I think I had a different attitude, and I think being married has definitely changed my priorities. I realize when you meld your life with another human being, that you can't just keep being laser focused on this one thing. But yeah, and you also mentioned you've got a stack of unread novels and comics and art books. That's where my art book study group came from. And if you do a search on my channel, there's a specific video I posted called Reference Rot. If you search for Reference Rot within the search bar on my channel page, go watch that video. And I talk about the fact that where the art book study group came from is that people keep saying, how do I learn? How do I get better? And for me, I have this mental illusion that when I buy an art book, I'm all, oh, I have this book. It's got this knowledge. I've got the books. I've got the knowledge now. And the book sits on the shelf, and it just, you know, I never do anything with it. I just collect more and more art books and never do anything with it. And I said, I need to stop. So I've got all these books. People, even now, there's still great art books that continue to come out. And I try to tell myself, or when friends recommend, I'm like, that's a great book. I'll get to it at some point. But for the most part, I try not to buy that many art books anymore, not because I don't want them, but because I want to use the books I already have. And the art book study group is me sitting down with a particular book and just going page by page on Patreon. I go through there and I do studies from them. And I talk about what I'm learning, and it's a study group for art books. So that's a big thing that I've been working on, you know, and I'm enjoying that too. And that's another thing that it's worth, you know, like usually I try to set aside like the last half hour of the day. I like to stop working and just read for a little while, let my brain cool down, because I can't just stop making art immediately. So I know we didn't talk too much about working on your files once you get them set up working in Procreate. But I hope that what I did at the top of the show was somewhat useful for anyone who does use Procreate. If you guys have any questions, we're going to wrap it here. So feel free to leave questions in the comments, and I will make it a point to address them in the comments, but I'll also try to bring them back up and maybe talk about any interesting questions you guys have in future live streams. So on that note, guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate it. Again, if you want to support this channel, if you'd like to subscribe, if you want to participate in an art book study group, if you want to see all the pages of Morningstar that are done so far, issues 1 through 7, go to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you want to get all of my social media posts and some little blog posts and little writings about my creative process delivered to your inbox once a month, get a free digital sketchbook, you can go to newsletter.jeremy.net. I'll sign you up for my newsletter there. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comics, my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods, the first 4 issues of my current series, Morningstar, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. If you are living outside the US and you read digitally on Amazon Kindle or Comixology, they're available there because I know international shipping is a son of a bitch. Or if you want to get those print copies, they're available there as well. So amazon.gerimi.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. So thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out. Byron says, I'm glad I could make it this time. Thanks for the stream. Good talk as always. Guys, if you enjoy these and you know other people who you think would enjoy these live streams as well, please forward the videos. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. Click that like button. Forward the videos to friends that you think may enjoy it as well. I greatly appreciate all of you. I appreciate you spending time with me. That's it for now. Go be creative.